Jazz. The night I found out my best friend had betrayed me, I was sitting at my kitchen table, smiling at a message I thought was meant for someone else. That was the strange thing about betrayal. Jazz. It rarely arrived with a warning. There was no dramatic music in the background. No sudden storm outside my window. Jazz. No voice telling me that everything I believed about the person I trusted most was about to collapse. It was just an ordinary Tuesday night. Rain tapped softly against the windows of my apartment. Jazz. The kind of rain that made the whole city feel quieter than usual. I had just finished dinner and was sitting at the table with a cup of tea growing cold beside me. My best friend, Claire, had been on my mind all evening. She had called me earlier that day, sounding nervous, not sad, not angry, nervous. At the time, I hadn't thought much of it. Jazz. Claire and I had been best friends for almost 12 years. We had grown up together, survived school together, shared our secrets, celebrated our successes. Jazz. And stood beside each other during the worst moments of our lives. At least, that's what I thought. I knew her better than anyone, or so I believed. That evening, Claire had asked me a strange question. Jazz. Emma, she had said over the phone, if someone you trusted completely lied to you about something important, would you want to know? I had laughed. What kind of question is that? I'm serious. Jazz. So am I. What happened? There had been a pause, a long one, then she said, nothing. Forget it. I remember sitting there with the phone against my ear, staring out the window. Claire, you know you can tell me anything. I know. Then tell me. Another pause. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And then she ended the call. I remember feeling confused, but not suspicious. Jazz. That was my first mistake. I didn't question her. I didn't call her back. I didn't imagine that the person asking me that question was already hiding something from me. Instead, I did what best friends do. Jazz. I trusted her. That night, around 11, I was scrolling through my phone when a notification appeared. It was from a group chat I didn't recognize. At first, Jazz. I thought it was some random message sent to me by mistake. Then I saw Claire's name. My heart stopped. I opened the notification. There were several messages. The first one read, "She still doesn't know, Jazz." I stared at the screen. I didn't understand. Then another message appeared. "Good. Keep it that way." My fingers went cold. I read the name of the group again. There were 4 people in it. Claire, Daniel, Jazz, Megan, and me. Except I wasn't actually in the conversation. My name had been mentioned. I had somehow been added to the group for a few seconds, or perhaps someone had accidentally changed a setting. Jazz. I don't know. All I know is that I could see the messages, and once I saw them, I couldn't look away. I scrolled up. There were dozens of messages. Some were from that night. Jazz. Others were from weeks earlier. My breathing became slower as I read. At first, I thought they were talking about someone else. Maybe another Emma. Maybe I had misunderstood. Jazz. Maybe this was all some strange coincidence. Then I saw a message from Claire. My Claire, the woman who had held my hand when my mother passed away. Jazz. The woman who had slept on my couch when I was going through the hardest breakup of my life. The woman I had trusted with every secret I had ever kept. She had written, "Jad, Emma will believe anything if it comes from me." I stopped breathing. I read it again, and again. The room suddenly felt too quiet. I looked around my apartment. Jazz. The same apartment where Claire had spent countless nights. The same kitchen where we had laughed until our stomachs hurt. The same couch where we had talked about our dreams. Jazz. I stared at the phone in my hand. My fingers were shaking. Then another message appeared. This one was from Daniel. "Are you sure she won't figure it out?" Claire replied. "She's my best friend. She trusts me completely." Then Megan wrote, "That's exactly why this will work." I felt something inside me break, not loudly, not dramatically. It was quieter than that. Jazz. It was the sound of a belief disappearing. The belief that I knew the person closest to me. I kept scrolling, my eyes moved from one message to another. I saw my name again and again. Jazz. They were talking about my job, my finances, my relationship, my family. Things I had only ever told Claire, private things. Things I had never shared with anyone else. Suddenly, Jazz. Every strange moment from the past few months began to make sense. The questions Claire had asked, the advice she had given me, the decisions she had encouraged me to make. Jazz. The opportunities she had told me to avoid, the people she had warned me about. I had always thought she was protecting me. Now I wondered if she had been controlling me. I scrolled further. Jazz. Then I saw a message that made my entire body go cold. It was from Claire. Once Emma signs those papers, everything will be done. I stared at the words. What papers? What was going to be done? Jazz. My mind raced. I had recently been offered a partnership opportunity at work, a major one. My manager had encouraged me to accept it, but Claire had strongly advised me against it. Jazz. She had said the company was unstable. She had told me I would regret it. She had convinced me to delay my decision. At the time, I had listened to her because I trusted her. But now I realized something. Jazz. She hadn't been trying to protect me. She had been trying to stop me. Why? I didn't know. Not yet. I continued reading, then I saw Daniel's name. What happens if she refuses? Claire answered. She won't. How do you know? Because she trusts me more than anyone. I put my phone down. I couldn't read anymore. My hands were trembling. My eyes filled with tears. Jazz. But I wasn't crying because I was sad. Not yet. I was in shock. I walked to the window. Outside, the rain had become heavier. Cars passed on the street below, their headlights cutting through the darkness. Jazz. People were going home. People were laughing. People were living ordinary lives. And somewhere inside my own life, something terrible had been happening right in front of me. I had just never seen it. Jazz. Or maybe I had. Maybe I had simply refused to believe it. There is a difference between not knowing someone is lying to you and choosing not to see the signs. I had chosen not to see them. Jazz. Because seeing them would have meant questioning the person I loved. And I didn't want to do that. So I had ignored everything, the little changes in Claire's behavior. Jazz. The way she sometimes became quiet when I talked about my career, the strange questions about my finances, the sudden interest in documents I had never mentioned to her. Jazz. The way she always seemed to know things about my life that I hadn't told her. At the time, I thought it was because she cared. Now I understood. She cared. Just not in the way I had believed. Jazz. I picked up my phone again. The group chat was still open. The messages continued. Then I saw something that made my heart sink. A message from Megan. What about the money? My eyes froze on those words. Yeah, money. What money? Then Claire replied, "We'll divide it once everything is transferred." I felt dizzy. I sat down. My mind was struggling to understand what I was reading. Transferred what? My money, my property, something else? Then Daniel wrote, "And Emma?" There was a long pause before Claire answered. "By then it won't matter." I felt my heart pound. I read that sentence over and over. By then, it won't matter. What did that mean? What had they planned? What had I done? I wanted to call Claire. I wanted to demand answers. I wanted to scream at her. But something stopped me. Jazz. A small voice inside my head whispered, "Don't let her know you found out." I didn't know where that voice came from. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was instinct. Jazz. Maybe it was the first moment I stopped being the trusting friend who believed every word Claire said. Whatever it was, I listened. I closed the chat. I locked my phone, and I sat there in silence. Jazz. For the first time in 12 years, I didn't know what to think about my best friend. I didn't know whether to cry. I didn't know whether to confront her. I didn't know whether to call the police. Yaz. I didn't even know what crime, if any, had been committed. All I knew was that something was happening. Something involving me, something involving money, and somehow, Claire was at the center of it. Yaz. Then my phone rang. Claire. I stared at her name on the screen. My heart began pounding. For a few seconds I couldn't move. The phone kept ringing. I thought about ignoring it. Yaz. But then I realized something. If I didn't answer, she might become suspicious. So I took a deep breath. I wiped the tears from my face and I answered. Hey, I said. My voice sounded normal. At least, I hoped it did. Emma? Claire sounded cheerful, almost too cheerful. Yeah? What are you doing? I looked at the phone. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her what she had done. Instead, I said, nothing. Just getting ready for bed. There was silence, then she laughed softly. You're so boring. I forced myself to smile. Someone has to be. Another silence. Jazz. Then Claire said something that I will never forget. You're okay, right? My stomach dropped. Why wouldn't I be? No reason. I leaned back in my chair. Claire, is something wrong? No, Jazz. The answer came too quickly. Are you sure? Of course. I closed my eyes. The woman on the phone was lying to me. I knew it. She knew it, and somehow we were both pretending. Okay, I said. Good, Jazz. Another pause, then she asked, You haven't talked to anyone tonight, have you? My eyes opened. What do you mean? I mean, you know. Anyone from work? My heart started racing. No, good. I waited. Why? Oh, no reason. I just thought maybe you were talking to Daniel. I felt my blood run cold. Daniel. The same Daniel whose name I had just seen in the secret group chat. Yaz. The same Daniel who had asked Claire whether I would figure everything out. I kept my voice calm. Why would I be talking to Daniel? Claire laughed. I don't know. You two work together sometimes. Yaz. Not really, right? The conversation suddenly felt like a game. A dangerous game, and I had no idea what the rules were. Anyway, she said, I'll see you tomorrow. Sure, love you, Yaz. Those two words almost destroyed me. I stared at the wall. For 12 years those words had meant safety. Tonight, they felt empty. I swallowed. Love you too. We hung up, and the moment the call ended, Yaz. I broke down. I cried quietly at first. Then harder. I covered my face with my hands. I cried for the friendship I thought I had. I cried for every memory that suddenly felt different. Yaz. I cried because I realized that I had trusted the wrong person. But after the tears came something else. Anger, a deep, quiet anger. Not the kind that makes you lose control. The kind that makes you think. Yaz. I picked up my phone. I opened the group chat again. But this time I didn't scroll randomly. I started taking screenshots. Every message, every name, every date, every conversation. I saved everything. Yaz. Then I sent copies to an email account Claire didn't know existed. I created a folder. I named it just in case. I didn't know what I was going to do with the evidence, but I knew one thing. Yaz. I wasn't going to confront Claire. Not yet. Because if Claire truly believed I trusted her completely, then I had one advantage. She had no idea that I knew. And that was the moment everything changed. Jazz. I had spent 12 years believing Claire knew everything about me. My secrets, my fears, my dreams, my weaknesses. But now, for the first time, I had something she didn't know. I knew the truth. Jazz. And she had no idea that I knew. I went to bed that night without sleeping. At 3 in the morning, I was still staring at the ceiling. Questions kept racing through my mind. Yaz. How long had this been happening? Who else was involved? What exactly were they planning? What papers was Claire talking about? What money were they planning to divide? And most importantly, why me? Yaz. I thought about the message. Once Emma signs those papers, everything will be done. I knew there had to be something behind it. Something bigger than a simple betrayal, Jazz. Something Claire had been building toward for months, maybe years. And if I wanted to protect myself, I needed answers. But I also needed patience, because the next morning, Jazz, I was going to do something I had never done before. I was going to look my best friend in the eyes and pretend I still trusted her. I didn't know it then, but that decision would change everything, Jazz. Because Claire thought she was playing a game against a woman who trusted her completely. She thought she knew my every move. She thought I would never question her, Jazz. She thought I would sign whatever she placed in front of me. She thought I was still the same Emma who believed every word she said. But she was wrong, because while Claire was planning her next move, Jazz, I had already started planning mine, and the most shocking part? I still had no idea just how deep the betrayal went. I thought I had discovered the worst secret of my life. I was wrong, Jazz. That night was only the beginning. Before I tell you what Claire did to me, you need to understand why I trusted her so completely, because without that part of the story, the betrayal doesn't make sense, Jazz. People often say that betrayal hurts because someone did something terrible to you. But I don't think that's the whole truth. Betrayal hurts because of who did it. If a stranger lies to you, you get angry, Jazz. If a stranger takes advantage of you, you walk away. But when the person who betrays you is someone you've trusted for years, someone who knows your fears and your weaknesses, the pain is different, Jazz. They don't just hurt you, they change the way you remember everything. And Claire wasn't just my best friend. She was the person I trusted more than anyone in the world. We met when we were 17, Jazz. I still remember that first day. I was sitting alone in the school cafeteria, pretending to be busy with a book, because I didn't want anyone to notice that I had nowhere to sit, Jazz. I had recently moved to the city with my mother. Everything was new school, new neighborhood, new people. And I was terrible at making friends. I was quiet, too quiet, according to my mother, Jazz. I didn't know how to walk into a room and start talking to strangers. I didn't know how to make myself interesting. So I sat alone. Then Claire appeared. She dropped her tray onto the table without asking, "You're sitting with me." I looked up. "Excuse me?" She smiled. "You're sitting with me. I don't think we've met." "Exactly. That's why we're going to fix that." I remember laughing, Jazz. It was the first time I had laughed in days. Claire had that effect on people. She was confident, funny, fearless, Jazz. She could walk into a room full of strangers and leave 5 minutes later knowing everyone's name. I was the opposite. Maybe that's why we became friends. She brought me out of my shell, Jazz. I made her slow down. She taught me how to speak up. I taught her how to listen, at least. That's what I believed. Our friendship grew quickly. Within a few months, we were inseparable, Jazz. We studied together. We went shopping together. We spent weekends at each other's houses. When my mother was struggling financially, Claire never made me feel embarrassed. When I couldn't afford something, Jazz, she would quietly find a way to include me without making it obvious. That was Claire, or at least that's who I thought she was. There was one night, years ago, Jazz, when I realized just how much I trusted her. I was 22. My mother had been diagnosed with a serious illness. I won't go into all the details. It was one of the hardest periods of my life, Jazz. I was terrified. I didn't know what was going to happen. I spent days pretending to be strong for my mother, and nights crying when no one could see me. Claire was the only person I told everything to, Jazz. She came to the hospital with me. She brought food. She sat beside me for hours. One night, around 2 in the morning, I walked out of my mother's hospital room because I couldn't breathe, Jazz. I sat on the floor in the hallway. I remember thinking, I can't do this. Then Claire found me. She didn't ask questions. She just sat beside me. I leaned against her shoulder and cried, and she said, "Jazz, you're not alone, Emma. I'm here." That sentence stayed with me for years. Whenever life became difficult, I remembered it. "I'm here." Those words became the foundation of our friendship, Jazz. So when Claire later told me she was going to help me with my career, I trusted her. When she gave me advice about relationships, I trusted her. When she told me someone wasn't good for me, I believed her, Jazz. When she told me I was making the wrong decision, I listened, because she had earned that trust, or at least, I thought she had. The first time I introduced Claire to Daniel, Jazz, she seemed unusually interested in him. Daniel worked in the same company as me. We weren't close friends, but we got along. He was intelligent, calm, ambitious, Jazz. The kind of person who always seemed to know what he wanted. At the time, I was considering applying for a senior position at the company. It was a big opportunity, Jazz. The kind of opportunity that could change my life. I remember telling Claire about it over coffee. She immediately frowned. "Are you sure?" I laughed. "Why wouldn't I be? I don't know. It sounds risky, Jazz." "It's a promotion." "Exactly." I looked at her. "Why does that sound like a bad thing?" Claire stirred her coffee. "I'm just saying, Emma, you don't know what they're planning." "What do you mean, Jazz?" "Companies don't give people big opportunities for no reason." I smiled. "That's your advice? Don't accept a promotion because my company might have an ulterior motive. You know what I mean?" "No, I don't," she sighed. "Forget it." And I did. At least I tried. A few days later, I told Claire that I had decided to apply. She didn't look happy, but she smiled. "I'm proud of you." I believed her, Jazz. Looking back now, I realized something. That was the first time I saw the other side of Claire. Not the best friend who wanted me to succeed. The person who wanted to control the direction of my life, Jazz. But I didn't see it then. I couldn't. Because when you love someone, your mind protects them. You explain away their strange behavior. You give them excuses. You tell yourself, "She didn't mean it that way, Jazz. She's just worried about me. She's only trying to help." I did that for years. Every time Claire discouraged me from taking a new opportunity, I told myself she was being protective, Jazz. Every time she questioned my decisions, I told myself she cared. Every time she wanted to know where I was or who I was talking to, I thought she was being a good friend, Jazz. I never asked myself the obvious question, why did she need to know everything? That question would come much later. By then, the damage was already done. After my mother passed away, Jazz, Claire became even more important to me. She was the person I called when I felt lonely. She was the person I called when I got good news. She was the person I called when I was scared, Jazz. My mother had always been my home. After she was gone, Claire became the closest thing I had to family. And Claire knew that. She knew exactly how much I needed her. Maybe that's why I never suspected her, Jazz. Because I couldn't imagine my life without her. There was another thing Claire knew about me. I hated conflict. I hated confrontation, Jazz. I would rather lose an argument than have a fight with someone I loved. Claire knew this. She used to joke about it. "Emma, someone could steal your car, and you'd apologize for making them late." I would laugh. "That's not true." "Yes, it is. Okay, maybe a little." She knew I avoided conflict. She knew I trusted easily. She knew I believed people were mostly good, Jazz. She knew I would give someone 10 chances before admitting they had done something wrong. Those weren't secrets, not exactly. But they were weaknesses. And Claire knew all of them, Jazz. That was why the messages I had read that night hurt so much. She's my best friend. She trusts me completely. Claire wasn't guessing. She knew. She knew exactly how much power she had over me, Jazz. And she had decided to use it. I spent the morning after discovering the secret chat thinking about our entire friendship. I went through old photographs. Claire and me at graduation. Jazz. Claire and me on vacation. Claire and me celebrating birthdays. Claire and me sitting beside my mother in the hospital. Every photograph seemed to ask the same question. Was any of it real? Jazz. I hated that question because I didn't know the answer. Maybe some of it was real. Maybe all of it was. Maybe Claire had genuinely loved me once. Maybe something had changed. Jazz. Or maybe I had never known her at all. That uncertainty was worse than anger. Anger gives you direction. Confusion leaves you standing in the middle of your own life, wondering which way to turn. Jazz. I decided to go to Claire's apartment that afternoon. Not to confront her, just to see her. I needed to understand something. Jazz. I needed to know if I could still recognize the person I had trusted for 12 years. When she opened the door, she smiled. Emma. She hugged me. I stood there with my arms around her. Jazz. And for one horrible second, I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to say, I know. I wanted to watch her face change. I wanted to see the truth. But I remembered the message. She still doesn't know. I smiled. Surprise. Claire stepped back. What are you doing here? I was nearby. It was a lie. She knew it. I knew it, but neither of us said anything. Come in. I walked inside. Jazz. Her apartment looked exactly the same. The same furniture, the same photographs, the same small plant on the windowsill that I had given her years ago. I suddenly felt sick. Jazz. How many times had I stood in this room and trusted her? How many secrets had I shared here? How many times had I told her something personal, never imagining that someone else might hear it later? Jazz. We sat on the couch. Claire looked at me. You seem quiet. I'm tired. Did something happen? There it was, the question, the perfect opportunity. I could have told her. Instead, I smiled. Jazz. Nothing happened. Claire studied my face. I studied hers. For the first time in 12 years, I was looking at my best friend like a stranger, and I noticed things I had never noticed before. Jazz. The way her fingers moved nervously when I stayed silent. The way she avoided eye contact. The way her smile disappeared whenever I mentioned work. The way she kept checking her phone. Suddenly, Jazz. I understood something. Claire was afraid, not of losing me, of being discovered. I leaned back. So, I said casually, how's everything going? Fine. Work? Fine. Any plans this weekend? Jazz. Not really. She was lying. I knew because I had seen the messages. There had been a meeting planned, a meeting involving Claire, Daniel, and Megan, and apparently it had something to do with me. Jazz. I smiled. That's good. Claire looked relieved, and that was when I realized something. She still thought she was in control. She thought I had no idea. Jazz. She thought I was sitting in her apartment as the same trusting friend who had walked through that door hundreds of times. She had no idea that I had spent the previous night reading every message. Jazz. She had no idea that I had saved everything. And she had no idea that I was beginning to ask questions. I left her apartment an hour later. She hugged me before I walked out. Love you, she said. Jazz. I looked at her. For the first time, I didn't immediately say it back. I paused, just for a second. But she noticed. Her eyes changed. Everything okay? I smiled. Of course. Then I hugged her. Love you too. I walked away. I didn't look back. That evening, I sat in my car outside my apartment for almost 20 minutes. I was staring at the steering wheel. I kept thinking about one thing. Jazz. If Claire had betrayed me once, I could understand it. People make mistakes. People become selfish. People make bad choices. But this didn't feel like a mistake. This felt planned, organized, deliberate. Jazz. There were other people involved. There was money involved. There were documents involved. And somehow the entire plan depended on one thing. My trust. Jazz. Claire had built the plan around the person she believed I was. The woman who wouldn't question her. The woman who wouldn't check the details. The woman who would sign whatever she was asked to sign. Gaz. The woman who would trust her best friend until it was too late. But Claire had made one mistake. She had assumed that because I was trusting, I was stupid. She had confused kindness with weakness. Gaz. And that mistake was going to cost her. But I still didn't know what the papers were. I still didn't know what money they were talking about. Gaz. And I still didn't know who Daniel and Megan really were in this plan. So I decided to do something that felt almost impossible. I would continue being Claire's best friend, at least on the surface. Gaz. I would laugh with her, talk to her, listen to her stories. I would let her believe everything was normal, but underneath it all, I would start searching for the truth. Gaz. I went home that night and opened a notebook. At the top of the first page, I wrote 4 names: Claire, Daniel, Megan. And finally, me underneath them, I wrote one question. What are they planning? Gaz. I stared at the words, then I added another. Why do they need me to sign something? And finally, how much money are they expecting? I didn't have the answers, but I was going to find them. Gaz. Because for 12 years, Claire had been the person who knew everything about me. My dreams, my fears, my mistakes, my weaknesses. But now the balance had shifted. I knew something about her. Gaz. Something she didn't know I knew. And that tiny piece of information was the first crack in the perfect friendship she had built around me. I didn't know it yet. Gaz. But the next few days would reveal something even more disturbing. The betrayal wasn't new. It hadn't started that week. It hadn't even started that month. Gaz. Claire had been preparing for this for much longer than I realized. And as I began looking back at our friendship with new eyes, I started noticing a pattern. The questions, the advice, the warnings. Gaz. The opportunities she had pushed me away from. The decisions she had encouraged me to make. Suddenly, my entire past with Claire began to look different. And then, 3 days later, I received an email. Gaz. The subject line contained only 4 words. Documents for your review. I opened it, and the moment I saw the attachment, I knew. Whatever Claire and the others were planning, it was finally beginning.